Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah Moldavsky, and I would like to welcome you to the Missouri Historical Society's Summer Family Fun Series. Thank you for being here. We are excited for you to join us virtually today, and we invite you to come back. Actually, this is the very last one, so thank you all for being here and joining us for the very last of the Summer Family Fun Series. I need to quickly mention a few details about how today's program will run. It will be roughly a 45-minute workshop. Today, we're going to ask you some questions and Today, we're going to ask you some questions and you can answer us by, and ask us questions too. You can talk with us through the chat. We will do our best to read everything you have to say, but we may not always have the chance. And just so you know, everything you type in there is private. It will only be seen by our presenters. Today's presentation is being recorded, so if you'd like to view it again or share it with your friends, it will be posted on the Missouri Historical Society's YouTube page channel early next week. Your feedback is always important to us. We would really appreciate if you could answer a few questions for us after the program. A Kobo Toolbox survey will soon open in another tab in your browser, so keep an eye out for that when you leave the session. I also want to say that I know some of you watching are Missouri Historical Society members. Thank you, and we are grateful for your support. And if you are not a member, we would love for you to consider joining us today. You can see a link to our website. I'll post it here in the chat box in a moment. And we also sincerely thank city and county residents for your tax contributions through the Zoo Museum Tax District. Awesome, thank you. So today, we are doing our Moving and Shaking, St. Louis and Music. So today is a movement-based workshop based on exploring St. Louis music. So today, we will learn about different St. Louis artists, hear some of their music, dance to this music, and think about how the music makes us feel. So before I pass this off to one of my friends, I'm just going to ask us to type into the chat, what are some St. Louis or Missouri artists you know of? So I'll give you all about a minute and a half to type into the chat. I'm pulling this up on my phone so we can make sure. So a minute and a half. Someone said Tina Turner. Don't worry, we will be talking about her today. Someone else said Scott Joplin, another very famous St. Louisan musician. And again, someone we will be talking about today. So you all have such a great knowledge of St. Louis music. We've got about a minute left, so take your time to type. I know sometimes we need a moment to think. Ooh, I see Chuck Berry, another great one. We got about 30 more seconds. All right, thank you all so much. I see that someone looked like they were raising their hand, but I think they put it down. Awesome. All right, I am now going to pass this off to my friend Ryan, who's going to talk a little bit about St. Louis history.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Sarah. So we're going to talk a little bit about St. Louis music history to get started. It seems like you guys have a really good knowledge of some important people in St. Louis history already related to music. But St. Louis has a really rich music history. It's been an important spot for all types of music, from early blues and jazz to country and bluegrass, and is also home to the oldest orchestra in the United States. So there's some classical musical history there too. Many of the musicians that we're going to talk about today are people that you may have heard of, or some people that you may have not heard of. But all of these musicians are pretty famous. And if you go down to the St. Louis Walk of Fame along Del Mar Boulevard, you can see the star of many of the artists that we are going to talk about today. So that gives you a little bit of background on St. Louis music history. We're going to go ahead and dive a little deeper into that history here in a second. So let's go ahead and get going.
All right, we're going to start today by talking about Katherine Dunham, who is a very famous artist from St. Louis history. She was actually born in East St. Louis, just across the river, but spent a lot of her time in St. Louis and around the country. She was a dancer. She was a choreographer, which is a word for someone who decides how the dance will go and what the different steps and movements are going to be. She was an actress, and she was also an activist, which is somebody who takes action and stands up for their rights and the rights of others. And she was known as the mother of modern Afro-Caribbean dance, which is kind of a fancy way of saying that she took different styles of music, different styles of movement, and she combined them together into something that was new for people. They hadn't ever had the chance to experience this before. She often performed with large groups on stage. So she would go to a theater and do a performance with other members of her ensemble, or she would perform on film so that people could go see her dancing in a movie theater. And these performances introduced many different people around the country and around the world to the sounds of Afro-Caribbean music, because her style was very formed and influenced by the sounds of things like drums and maracas and instruments from different parts of the world. So she would take different elements of style and different sounds from places like African nations or Caribbean nations, and she would put them together again into something that was new and different. But she was also an activist for civil rights. She was a Black woman, and she, at the time she was living, was not always allowed to perform in certain theaters, or there were certain theaters that didn't allow Black people to come in and see the performances. So one way that she took action to make that better was she refused to perform for segregated audiences. She said either everybody gets to come in and watch the performance, or I'm not performing at all. And that was one action that she could take to stand up for herself and to make sure that other people had rights as well. And the reason we talk about Katherine Dunham at the History Museum is not just because she was an important part of St. Louis history, but because she was very influential in this area of dance. Her style of choreography and her style of dancing is still used to teach students of dance today. So if you take a dance class, or if you've been to a dance recital or you watch performances today, you might be seeing some things that Katherine Dunham came up with and invented. And that's what makes her a really important part of St. Louis and St. Louis musical history. So speaking of dance, we are going to do some dancing today. So we are going to kind of use the spirit of Katherine Dunham to help us move and feel how we want to move when we listen to music. So let's get moving and shaking. So we are going to first learn about a musician from St. Louis. We're going to listen to some of their music or similar music, and we're going to think about what a dance to that kind of music would look like. And when we are doing that, we're going to think about what emotions that music makes us feel. But before we can get started with that, we need to do a little bit of a warm up. So I'm going to toss it to my friend Carla to show us how we warm up today.
Okay, great. Thanks, Emily. Okay, so yeah, we're going to learn about several different St. Louis artists today, singers and dancers. And before they perform on stage, they usually need to do a warm-up exercise. So that's what we're going to do now. So I want everybody to stand up. And we're going to step back, make sure you have some space. And we're going to start from the head and work our way down to get our heart pumping and get ready to move. So let's start with some head rolls. Let's just start bowing our head and then slowly roll and stretch out our neck. Let's do 2 rotations. All right, now let's go the other way. Oh, great, that feels good. All right, now let's do some shoulder rolls. Let's get our shoulders rolling around. Oh, that feels good. Stretch out your back and your shoulders. Okay, great. Now we're going to stretch our arms out and do some forward and backward rolls. Let's start forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now let's reverse. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. All right, now let's put our hands on our hips. We're going to stretch out our waist and our hips. Let's start going forward to the side, back to the other side, and forward. Let's go around again. All right, now let's reverse that. And one more time. All right, let's get those hips shaking. All right, now we're gonna get our heart pumping, and you can march in place. If you're really ambitious, you might want to do some jumping jacks. Let's do another 30 seconds. Great job. All right, let's shake it all out. Hopefully we're loosened up and our heart's pumping. You might want to get a drink. And let's move on and learn about some St. Louis artists.
All right, thanks so much, Carla. The first artist that we're going to talk about today is someone that some of you mentioned that you might know, Scott Joplin. Now, Scott Joplin lived here in Missouri for many years. He lived in Sedalia, but he also lived here in St. Louis. Some of you may have even had a chance to go to his house that's here in St. Louis. That's a museum today along Delmar Boulevard. But Scott Joplin was famous as a piano player, and he also wrote his own music, which makes him a composer as well. And he wrote over 100 pieces of music in the ragtime style, and he was dubbed the King of Ragtime. So some songs of his that you may have heard of may be songs like The Entertainer or Maple Leaf Rag. The city of Joplin, Missouri is also named after him. And he was really famous during his lifetime for this ragtime style of piano playing, but he was forgotten for a long time. And then people became reinterested in him in the 1970s, and his music was rediscovered and he became really famous once again. So we're gonna have a chance to listen to some of Scott Joplin's music here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna listen to a song, and then as we listen, in that spirit of Katherine Dunham, I'm gonna have you kind of dance along to the music. See what the music makes you feel and how it makes you feel, okay? So we're gonna have a chance to do that, and then we'll talk a little bit about that music after we listen to it. So we're gonna go ahead and listen to a song now from Scott Joplin, and get up, get some space, and dance to this music as you hear. All right. Well done. Hopefully that got you loosened up a little bit. I want you to think about a few questions here. First, think about what emotions did you feel while you were listening to that music, or how did that music make you feel? And what kind of dance did you do and why? So I'm going to give you a minute and a half to go ahead and write your answers in the chat. And then we'll read off those answers and talk a little bit about how this music made you feel and how this music influenced how you danced to it. So go ahead and take a minute to write in the chat, and then we'll start reading off some of your responses here in a second. All right, so I see people saying that they liked to pretend they were playing the piano as they heard this ragtime piano being played. I hear other people or read other people saying that it was really happy. It was kind of like an uplifting song that made you feel good, made you feel happy. Great. Bouncing. Yeah, I kind of felt that too when I was dancing along. It kind of made you feel like you should go up and down as the piano moved up and down from songs from, sounds that were lower to sounds that were higher. It did have a bouncy feel, that's for sure. Do we have any other responses out there? I think we've got some great ones already. I think a lot of those that you guys mentioned were those that I kind of felt too. All right. Well, thank you so much for responding. It was great to get your feedback there. We're going to do something similar with some other musicians as well as we work our way throughout this program. So the next musician we're going to actually talk about is Tina Turner. Now, someone mentioned Tina Turner at the beginning of this video because she's pretty famous here in St. Louis as well. And not just famous in St. Louis. She's known worldwide for hit songs like What's Love Got to Do with It? You may have heard this song on the radio before. She moved to St. Louis when she was a teenager, and she really fell in love with the music scene here in St. Louis. She particularly liked rhythm and blues, or R&B. And so she started to go to all of these concerts and eventually met Ike Turner and joined his band as a singer and as a dancer. Now, she's known for having a great voice, but she's also known for having these incredible performances where she would just electrify audiences with all kinds of dance moves and energy. And eventually she became a solo artist and won several Grammys. And today some people refer to her as the queen of rock and roll. She played music in a lot of different genres, R&B, soul, pop, rock, and really carved out a nice legacy for her, okay? So we're gonna have a chance to do what we did earlier and listen to some of Tina Turner's music. Now, this is gonna sound a bit different than Scott Joplin. So listen to the music, start to dance along, and think about how you're feeling, how this music impacts you and makes you feel, and then we'll have a chance to talk about that here in a second. Okay, so make sure you have some space. I'm gonna get up so I have some space here as well. And then once the music starts, you can get started dancing. You're simply the best. Better than all the rest. Better than anyone. Anyone I've ever met. I'm stuck on your heart. I hang on every word you say. Tear us apart. All right, great. So you can probably feel your heart beating a little bit after we've been dancing to some of these artists. Go ahead and write in the chat what you think. How did this music make you feel? And what kind of dances did you do and why? You can also think a little bit about how this might have been a little bit different from how Scott Joplin's music impacted you. So we'll give you a minute and 30 seconds to go ahead and write your responses in the chat, and then we'll read those out as we go through. All right, I see some people saying they love to like throw their hands up. I had that feeling too. It was kind of like it felt like an anthem and you're putting your hands up in the air. Some people were mouthing the lyrics or lip syncing as they went through and thought it was really fun to kind of pretend as if you were the one performing like Tina Turner. Some other people were humming along as they listened to the tune. Maybe it's a tune you know, maybe not one that you know, but you could start to get a feel for it. Oh, and I have some saying it was more smooth, right? It wasn't quite as like bouncy and jumping around as Scott Joplin's music was. It was kind of more of a smooth feel to it. Okay, great responses. Thank you so much for adding those into the chat. It's always interesting to hear how this music impacts other people. A lot of times it impacts people in similar ways, but sometimes in very different ways as well. All right. Thank you so much for your responses. Next, we're going to learn about Chuck Berry. So I'm going to pass it over to Emily to share some information about Chuck Berry.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. So Chuck Berry is one of my personal favorites. I'm so excited to get to talk about him today. He was born here in St. Louis and lived here all his life. He had houses in other places around the country, but he really called St. Louis home for the majority of his life. And he's very, very closely connected to our city. He's often called the father of rock and roll. And we can think of a lot of different artists, I'm sure, like maybe Elvis Presley or bands like the Beatles that we think of are being very popular with rock and roll, but Chuck Berry was really before them all. And they learned from him and really took a lot of influence from him. He was a singer, he was a guitar player and musician, he was a songwriter, and he had many hit songs in the 1950s and 60s called songs like Maybelline, Roll Over Beethoven, Johnny Be Good. And one of the things that was really impressive with Chuck Berry was that he would do tricks and stunts while he would play the guitar and sing his songs at the same time. And one of them was his famous, he called it the duck walk. And so I'm gonna actually challenge everyone to try and do the duck walk if you can. I'm gonna show you kind of what it looked like. And I want you to also know that, I don't know if we've shared this, but we can't see you. So you can be as silly and as goofy as you want while you are performing, because we can't see you, you can just see us. So feel free to do your best, make it as silly as you want. But this is how the duck walk would work. Chuck Berry would pretend to play, he would play his guitar. So start pretending to play your guitar, however you want to do it. You're playing your guitar. And then he would hop on one foot while playing his guitar. So you should be playing your guitar and hopping on one leg while you do it. Then while you're hopping, try and extend your foot out like this and get as low to the ground as you can and play your guitar at the same time. It should be pretty challenging, but we're gonna play a piece of music from Chuck Berry right now, and we are gonna challenge you to do what you've done with Scott Joplin and Tina Turner. Listen to the song, move however you want. Start dancing in any way. If you wanna try and do the duck walk, that would be great. But if you feel like you need to do something different, that's fine too. Think about what you are feeling while you're listening to this music. Think about the way the music sounds to you. Think about the emotions it brings for you. And then think about how you're moving in a way that's either the same or different from how you moved to the other songs. So let's listen to Chuck Berry.
Well, lived a country boy.
Great job, everybody. You should definitely be breathing hard after that one, especially if you're doing the duck walk. It's not easy to do, and it's one of the reasons that Chuck Berry was so impressive. So just like we did, take about a minute and a half. Put in the chat, what emotions were you feeling while you were listening to that music and dancing along? Or what emotions would you use to describe this music? And then what kind of dance did you do? And why did you feel like you needed to move your body in that way? Yeah, I see some people already putting some answers in the chat. Hyper. Yeah, my heart is beating very fast right now. So it's definitely got a faster beat, makes us move a little more quickly. Maybe you're tapping your feet, maybe you're spinning around. Yeah, it definitely makes you move a lot. I see someone was playing air guitar. It's so fun to play air guitar. I love to play air guitar. I lost my mind, someone says. Yeah, it really gives you a lot of energy, I think. And so I also want you to think, how is that the same or different from the music of Scott Joplin and Tina Turner that we've already listened to? So maybe take another 30 seconds, put some answers to that question in the chat. How does it feel different from the music we've already listened to? I have to get a drink of water. Any other thoughts? The way this music makes us feel. Awesome. Sounded like Run, Run, Rudolph. Yeah, it's very similar style. Yeah. Thank you so much for everybody for sharing your thoughts on this and for trying the duck walk if you gave it a try. And now we're going to listen to someone from St. Louis history who comes from a different version or a different genre of music. Carla's going to tell us about that.
Okay. Hi. So yeah, this is a little bit different. And maybe someone you have not heard of before, Robert McFerrin Sr. He was an opera singer. He was an operatic baritone. So opera is like a musical, but it's often sung in a foreign language and is often very dramatic. A baritone means he had a very deep voice. He was born in 1921, so almost 100 years ago. So that's why he may be a little more unfamiliar to you. But he was the first African-American man to sing at the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. And he also became the first African-American to sing in a lead role. He was actually born in Arkansas and lived in Tennessee during his early childhood. But after 8th grade, his parents sent him to live with his aunt and uncle in St. Louis so he could get a better education. And then he attended Sumner High School here. He joined the choir, and his choir teacher was so impressed with him that he gave him private lessons and helped him earn money for college. So he went to college in Chicago. And during that time, though, World War II came along, and he went and joined the Army and fought in World War II. But then he came back and he graduated from college and went on to New York City to make it big. He started on Broadway for a while and other theaters, but then he became, like I said, the first African-American to sing at the Metropolitan Opera. So that was the big time for opera. He eventually moved out to California, where he taught music, and he tried to make it big in Hollywood. He actually was kind of in a movie. It was a movie called Porgy and Bess, starring Sidney Poitier, which is a famous actor. But Sidney couldn't sing, so they dubbed in Robert McFerrin's voice in as Porgy and Bess. He then came back to St. Louis in 1973, and he taught and performed opera until his death at age 85. He's also the father of 2 children, Brenda and Robert Jr., who is better known as Bobby. You might have heard of him, or maybe your parents or grandparents know him. But Bobby McFerrin is a Grammy Award-winning composer, music producer, and singer who is best known for his song, Don't Worry, Be Happy, which starts with whistling. And by the way, Robert McFerrin was also known as a very good whistler. All right, so now we're going to listen to a clip from an opera called Rigoletto, which he starred in. And we're going to do the same as before. We're going to think about what you're feeling and start dancing. Now, this may be a little bit different than what we've heard before. How might this kind of music make you dance or feel? All right, so let's listen. Okay. All right. So, how did you feel while listening to this music? Maybe a little different than the other songs. Oops, let's go back to this previous slide. Yeah. So type in the chat again, what emotions came up when you were listening to this type of music? And how did you feel like moving? Yeah, I see lots of arm movements. Yes, yes. What kind of dancing did you do? It's a little more difficult, I think, to dance to opera. Swaying, some swaying. Wiggly dancing, I like it. Yeah, it's slower and smooth and a different language. Yeah, a little unfamiliar. Opera is very, very dramatic. So I see, you know, maybe a lot more facial expressions went into the dancing. Deep feelings. Yeah, more emotional, strong emotions. Anything else? We got about 30 seconds. Anything else? Yeah, well, I heard a lot of deep emotions. Lip syncing, yeah, you can kind of move your lips to it too. Yeah. All right, well, thank you guys so much. Now we're going to learn about another artist.
All right, thanks so much, Carla. Next, we're going to learn about Henry Townsend. Now, this may not be an artist that you're as familiar with as Scott Joplin or Tina Turner or Chuck Berry, but he is very important for St. Louis music history, especially for the blues scene here in St. Louis. So when we think about St. Louis and we think about the blues, some of us may think about hockey, think about the St. Louis Blues hockey team. But their nickname actually comes from the long history of blues music here in St. Louis. So Henry Townsend recorded blues songs over 9 decades. He lived to be 96 years old, and he played music all the way till the end of his life. When he was 9, he actually ran away from home. He had a tough childhood, and he ran away from home and moved to East St. Louis and eventually crossed the river to St. Louis. When he was a teenager, he actually saw another famous St. Louis blues musician play, Lonnie Johnson, who's a famous blues guitar player. And when he saw Lonnie Johnson play, he knew he had to get a guitar and learn to be a blues guitar player. And he did. And he played with a lot of famous blues musicians, like the harmonica player Sonny Boy Williamson. He also recorded a lot of his own music. One of his most famous songs would be Cairo's My Baby's Home, which is a song that really showed a specific style of blues music that was formed and developed here in St. Louis and really impacted blues music throughout the rest of the country. So we're going to actually have a chance to listen to some of his music here in a second and think a little bit about how this music may sound similar or different to some of the artists that we've listened to so far. And as always, dance along, see how the music makes you feel and how it makes you move. And then we'll talk a little bit about Henry Townsend in a second. So go ahead and get up, find some space, and dance along.
But when I give her my candy, she just free as she can be. Yes, the girl that I want now, people wants to walk out of my door.
All right. that was a little blues for you. Go ahead and type in the chat. How did that make you feel? What are some emotions you felt as you listened to that song? And what kind of dancing did you do to that song and why? All right, so I see some people putting some responses into the chat. A lot of twisting. Yeah, you kind of feel like as that piano goes side to side, you start moving side to side too. I kind of felt that twisting action too. What else? How are some other ways that this made you feel, or some different ways that it influenced you to dance? Relaxing, right? Yeah, there's this calmness to a lot of the blues, especially towards the end of that audio sample, where it is a kind of relaxing feeling, a soothing kind of feeling. All right, anyone else? Any other comments here in the chat? Nice and smooth, and it feels like he's telling a story, right? It's like a story set to a song in many ways, and that's true of a lot of the blues. A lot of these blues musicians were also great storytellers, and they used the music to tell different stories about their own experiences or about other people's experiences in their lives. So that was a good thing to point out. Great. All right, a lot of great responses from you there. And just keep that in mind, that this blues music really is an important genre that has a lot of connections to St. Louis, and Henry Townsend is one of those big blues artists from St. Louis. Next, we're going to talk about Nelly, so I'm going to hand it over to Emily to talk a little bit about him.
All right, so our last musician that we're going to talk about today is Nelly. This might be someone you're familiar with because Nelly is still making music today. So a lot of the artists we've learned about are from history, and they've either stopped making music or they have passed on. Nelly is still around and making music today, so he's a lot more modern. He is a rapper, a singer, a songwriter, an entrepreneur, somebody who creates businesses or products to sell. He's an investor in other people, so he uses his money to help them create music or products that they want. And occasionally he's even an actor. But he is born and raised here in St. Louis, Missouri, so he's very closely linked with our city. He started his music career with a hip hop group from the Midwest called the St. Lunatics. So even in his starting group, he used the name of the city of St. Louis. And they started in 1993, and they signed on to Universal Records in 1999, and they've been making music both together as a group, and also Nelly individually has been making music ever since. The song that really made him famous, though, was a song called Country Grammar. And it was a song that was all about living here in St. Louis. So just like we kind of talked about, Henry Townsend told a story in his music, Nelly was doing the same in songs like Country Grammar, talking about what his life was like and what it was like to grow up right here in St. Louis. And the music video for Country Grammar actually was shot here in St. Louis on a block. Nelly invited all of his friends and family to be in the background having a big party. And so this song is really about his experience of what it was like to live in St. Louis. So just like we've done with past musicians, we're going to listen to a quick sample or a quick excerpt from Country Grammar, and we are going to dance. So you'll see how your body moves when you listen to a little bit more modern music that might have some of those same influences of blues and rock and roll and some of those other things. Think about what you're feeling and think about how you're moving your body as well. And so let's see how you move to this song.
Indiana, Chi-Town, KC, Motown to Alabama, LA, New York Yankees, sluggers, Hotland, Louisiana, getting paid off this country grammar, smoking in Savannah, blow 30 mil like I'm Hammer, going down, down, baby, yo, street in the Range Rover, boom, boom, baby, ready to let it go, and it shimmy, go, listen to it now, light it up and take a bug, pass it to me now, going down, down, baby, yo, street in the Range Rover, boom, boom, baby, listen, take.
That's such a fun song to move to, right? And it might be a song we even know or we've heard on the radio recently, or something that maybe we're even a little more familiar with. So take about 90 seconds, In the chat, tell us, what did you feel listening to that music? What emotions came up for you? What emotions would you use to describe this music? And then what kind of dance did you do? Think about how you were moving your head. Think about how you were moving your arms. Think about how you were moving the different parts of your body. I see someone said it's bouncy. Yeah, it's got a really good beat, right? Most hip hop and rap music does, so that you can really move your body along with the beat. Someone says that one was my favorite. I love that song too. I think it's great. Very upbeat, yeah. So maybe think about what are some of the emotions that come along with something being upbeat. What do we think of when something is upbeat and very bouncy? I know that I really feel like I need to bounce my body up and down. You wanted to do the duck dance to that. I don't know if this is asking me to do the duck dance or if you felt like doing the duck dance. Sure, you can absolutely do the duck walk to that song as well. It's definitely got a beat that you can bounce up and down on one leg too. Go for it. I think that sounds fantastic. Any other emotions that came up for you listening to this song? Any other ways that you moved your body? Go ahead and put those in the chat. Someone said they were breakdancing. That's wonderful. Go for that. Just make sure you're being safe. Don't knock over any furniture, hurt yourself. But absolutely, however your body feels like it needs to move, I think is something that Katherine Dunham would support, and also all the other artists would support as well. All right, thank you so much for your responses to all of these questions. And because we are getting to the end of our program, we are gonna start thinking about kind of wrapping up all of these ideas. So you've learned about all of these different artists from St. Louis history, and they all had very different styles and did a lot of different things. So first I want you to take about 30 seconds and I want you to put into the chat what music that we listened to today, what music did you like and why? So someone has already said which one was their favorite. You can think about it that way. What style of music? What did you like and why? Someone said, I made a fool of myself. Sure, I don't think it's foolish. I think it's fun, but you just do whatever feels right to you. You're in the safety of your own home, it's fine. So right now we're thinking, what music did we like that we listened to and why? Put your answers in the chat for us. Someone said Henry Townsend because it was different. Yeah, so sometimes it's really great, especially when we come to the History Museum, we get to learn about artists that we might not know of before. We might be introduced to a style of music we didn't know. Someone else said Chuck Berry. Yeah, Chuck Berry is a lot of fun to listen to. Chuck Berry actually did performances at a place called Blueberry Hill, pretty much right up until he passed away. Someone said, I like Bobby McFerrin, and now I know his dad. Yeah, so just like we were talking about, it's really cool to be introduced to new artists and new people we didn't know before. And how cool is it that Bobby McFerrin's dad was the first Black man to sing with the Metropolitan Opera in New York. Always cool to learn new things and be introduced to different styles of music. Chuck Berry was my favorite. I love Chuck Berry. That's great. Yeah. So now I want you to think about the dances that you did. Oh, someone just said Nelly because his music made me want to dance the most. Yeah, we got a hip hop fan. That's great. I love it. So now I want you to think about the dances that you did. So whenever we took time to, listen to the music and move our bodies, however felt right for us, how were the dances that we did for each of the musicians? How were they the same and how were they different? This is where you might want to think about, what did we do with our arms? What did we do with our bodies? Were we going fast? Were we going slow? What do you think? Take about 30 seconds to talk it over and put your answers in the chat. How are our dances the same and different? Opera made me go slower than the other ones. Yeah, so that's a way that they're different. Each of the different styles made us move a little differently. But opera was really kind of the slowest one and also the most dramatic, made us do big, big movements, right? I like the varied movements of Katherine Dunham. Yeah, she combined a lot of different styles and influences. And so her movements were really different and varied, and that made it really interesting to people. So sometimes when we listen to something that's different for us for the first time, we can really see kind of a different perspective on things, and that's what Katherine Dunham brought. All of them made me make a fool of myself. Yeah, well, I don't call it being a fool, I call it having fun. And as long as you're having a good time, it's a great way to get exercise, it's a great way to learn something new and different, and have a good time. So when you're in your house, you know, because it's a rainy day or for whatever reason, turn on some music, and maybe you'll turn on one of the artists we talked about today and you'll dance, and it'll be a really fun thing to do. All right, so on that note, we do have some a challenge for you. Someone said the different beats make me dance fast and slow. Yeah, so sometimes you move faster and sometimes you move slower. So on that note, if you're gonna be in your house, we have some things that you can do, kind of a takeaway challenge for you, and Carla's gonna tell us a little bit about that.
All right, thanks, Emily. Yeah, so now what can you do on your own? So we have 2 takeaway challenges, and the first is to create your own dance to your favorite St. Louis artist. It could be one of the ones we talked about today, but maybe you have somebody else in mind that might be from St. Louis that you really like. If you do something, we would love to see it. So if you could tag us at #MHSLearn or #Clubhouse@your-house. We would love to see a dance that you could come up with to your own artist, or just even text us or send us a message and tell us what you did. And then our second takeaway challenge is to write your own song. You can write just the lyrics like a poem, or you can try to maybe add some music to it. Maybe you play an instrument, or you could make an instrument of your own. The point is just to be creative. You know, writing music is a lot of creativity and a lot of different talents involved. So see what you can come up with. And again, tag us at MHSLearn or Clubhouse@your-house, because we'd love to see what you come up with. All right, and Sarah's gonna close us out.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. I personally had a lot of fun. It got me up and moving, so hopefully it got you all up and moving. So thank you for sharing with us this morning. And thank you for tuning in. You know, we are very curious. Did you learn anything new today? Let us know in the chat box and tell us, what was your favorite thing today? We would love for you to join the Missouri History Museum for more events. This is sadly the last event for Summer Family Fun, but that doesn't mean that we don't have other things going on. So check out our events page. We have a youth workshop coming up, I believe, Wednesday, August 12th, all about kind of thinking about race and activism in kids. So check out the events page for more information on that. We also have our storytelling every Friday morning at 10:30. You can visit at www.mohistory.org or Facebook to check out upcoming virtual programming. And remember, we would love for you to tell us what you think about the program today. A Kobo Toolbox survey should have opened in another browser tab. Please take a moment to complete it if you can. Thank you again for joining us this morning, and hopefully we'll see you all in the future. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.